Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm Michael, and today we're going to hear some stories from Phil Wise. Phil is unique, and he's the exact kind of person that I want to be talking to. Phil is an actual listener of the podcast, and he reached out to me on Instagram and said, "Hey, brother, I have some great stories, one particularly about a mule deer that I have to tell you." And I immediately got him on the line, and we got his stories recorded. So take a note, guys. We want to hear your stories. We want to hear more great stories from hunters like Phil. So, that being said, I don't want to go too in detail into what he's going to be telling you guys. I'm going to let him go ahead and do that, but I want to thank him one more time for taking his time to come onto the podcast. Hope you guys all enjoy his stories as much as I did hearing from him. So let's let Phil tell you his stories. All right, Phil. Welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Oh, man, I have been excited to talk to you for a few weeks now. You actually are the first person to reach out to me saying, I have a killer story that I want to tell you. And that's kind of the goal of this whole podcast. I've been doing a lot of the legwork to get guests involved, but I want people to reach out to me from all over the country and tell me their favorite stories. So this is perfect, and I'm excited that you're getting this ball rolling, and hopefully people hear this and start doing the same.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's you guys have an awesome podcast. I love this, this format. It's not technical, it's not gear. It's just like, hey, this is a cool thing that happened to me in the woods, and they're awesome to listen to.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you think so, man. It's I'm winging it. That's all I can say is I'm winging it, but I'm having a ton of fun. And I think I've said this a couple times on some of the other podcasts. Most people that are on, as soon as we wrap up, usually start sending me messages saying, "Oh, they forgot this one story that they wanted to tell me." So everybody wants to come back on. So that's a good sign, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, people can tell good hunting and fishing stories, right?
Yeah, right. Everybody loves telling their stories, no matter how true or not true they are. So.
Exactly.
Cool, Phil. Why don't we kick this thing off like we normally do and let you introduce yourself to the listeners.
Perfect. My name is Philip Wise. I live currently in Lubbock, Texas, but grew up in Colorado. I grew up rodeoing. My grandparents farmed and ranched, so kind of in the agriculture background. And then I made my way into insurance, is what I do now. So kind of a weird tale to there. Started hunting when I was 9,
Wow.
and have kind of been hunting off and on. Have one of those on and off affairs with hunting. And hunted, late elementary school through junior high, and then kind of took a little hiatus during high school, and then picked it back up in college, and then on to now.
Sports and girls kind of take over a little bit right there in high school for a lot of people.
Yeah, that rodeo thing, it's all year round. It's not like football where there's a season and off season. Like you can go somewhere every weekend, 52 weeks out of the year, and that's what we did growing up. And actually professional rodeoed for a year out of college, and then got crippled. So that was my whole life for a while.
Okay, we're gonna go off subject, but crippled? What happened, man?
So I've had ACL reconstruction in both knees. I was a calf roper. The last one was a pretty devastating knee injury, and I never got healthy enough to go back to the level I needed to be at.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. That's brutal, man. I'm sorry that you're not still kicking it with your passion there, but at least you managed to fill your time with some other stuff like hunting, right? It freed you up to go hunting.
It just made me do something else that was really hard that, you're never going to quite master, if you will. So yeah, we just traded one for the other.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Cool. Well, I know that you got a couple stories for us. Why don't you start by just setting the stage, man? I know that you have a specific mule deer story that you reached out to me about, but you said you got a couple that kind of layer together to make this bigger story. So fill us in.
Yeah, well, we'll start with the beginning, and then we'll skip some of the middle stories. But the first 2 deer I actually killed were a Saturday and a Sunday kind of situation. And there's a little story with both of these. So the first one, we were hunting in Northwest Colorado, which is where my family grew up, on some public ground. And we had shot, or my dad, I think, had shot a little 4-corn mule deer, just a meat buck. And when we got up to him, he was still alive. He was, mortally wounded, but he was still alive. And my grandpa handed me his little 22, and it was kind of like the rite of passage. Like, hey, you've showed interest in hunting, but we need to dispatch this deer. Like, you're up to bat, kid. So he hands me.
Were you hunting rifle, or your dad was hunting rifle or archery?
Rifle
or muzzleloader. Okay, got it.
Yep, rifle season. So he hands me the little 22. At like 10 feet or whatever, I shoot this buck and kill him. Well, the story is not that. The story is about that 22. That 22 was built probably in the late 40s, early 50s. It was my granddad's truck rifle that he'd shoot coyotes, and if he was trapping or whatever, he'd shoot stuff with that.
Yeah.
And he killed an elk with that gun.
What?
Yeah. So the story, and again, this is one of those, I don't know how true this was because obviously I wasn't there, but the story is that he was driving down a road going back to the ranch. There was a big clear cut where they're putting highline poles in, and a spike elk walked out at 50 yards or whatever. He jumps out of the truck with the 22, shoots this elk, kills it right on the spot. It rolls down the hill, almost into the back of the pickup. He drug him 10 feet in the back of the truck and took him home. So that's the 22. We still have that gun at my dad's house, but yeah, that's the infamous 22. And the next day we're hunting in a similar area, went to some friends' ranch. They've got a big ranch up there, and we were having some trouble getting into deer where we were out on the public ground. I said, hey, just come hunt over here. We've got some deer. And as we're getting in the pickup, the guy that owns the ranch hands me this 243, which also has a little story to it. We drive out, we find a really nice 3-point, big bodied, big fat deer. And he looks at me, and I've got this gun, and I'm like, I don't even know how to load this thing. Like, I know nothing. I'm 9 years old.
Yeah.
And he grabs me, and he grabs the gun, and we get out of the pickup. We walk a little ways. He gets down on one knee, and he puts the barrel of the gun over his shoulder, and he is my shooting stick. And he's like, click the safety off. There's one in the chamber. Put the crosshairs on his shoulder. Pull the trigger. And I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? He's like, you shoot this deer before he runs away. And so, yeah, I touch it off, shoot this deer. My first official deer that I got killed, and that guy pulled a bad joke on me. We got up there, we're field dressing the deer, and he's like, hey, come down here and look where you shot him. You can see the hole inside of him. So I, as a 9-year-old, like an idiot, stick my head down pretty much in the chest cavity of this deer looking for this bullet hole, and he takes 2 big handfuls of blood that have pulled in the chest cavity all over my face, my jacket, and the rule was there you had to wear it for 24 hours at least. So we're going to town, we eat lunch, it's like I'm on parade with this blood.
Oh my god, that's an interesting tradition, man.
Yeah, that was how I got started. But that 240.
Was your grandpa?
No, this was a family friend of ours that owned that ranch.
Okay.
Yeah, grandpa was there. Grandpa, dad, grandma, everyone was there, was in on the deal but me. Obviously,
yeah,
to wear the blood. But the interesting story is that rifle. That was our family friend's 243. That rifle, I believe, when I killed that deer, it was like the 10th or 12th first deer that gun had shot, and every single one of those deer was one shot, one kill, like no follow-up shots. That gun was 100% on first deer, and so it was like a sacred family heirloom to them. That was the first deer gun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, I actually have it's kind of a sad story about family guns. If you've heard a couple of these episodes, I'm a newer hunter, so I wasn't really into guns. My father wasn't into guns. I've kind of picked this all up myself. And my grandfather passed away before all of this happened. But I remember when I was younger going to his house in Kansas, he had just gun cases just filled with guns. And he served in World War II. So he had his World War II rifle. He had those hunting rifles. He probably had 40 or 50 guns on display in this case. And I always, when I was over there, I was like, these are, being a little boy, I'm like, these are so cool. Didn't think much about it until I started hunting. It turns out my uncle inherited all of those when my grandpa passed, and he sold every last one of them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. In retrospect, I was like, I just wish I had started hunting a few years earlier, and I would have inherited a fantastic, beautiful arsenal. But nope, who knows where those guns are, including, I wish he would at least held on to my grandpa's World War II rifle. But what are you going to do?
Yeah,
my story is much more sad than yours.
On a happier note, and family heirloom guns, that's actually my hunting rifle. And this kind of parlays us into the mule deer story here in a little bit. But my great uncle was a game warden in Colorado. He built saddles. Like, this was like, he was a man's man. Like, if you could do it, that was just like an awesome thing a guy could do. Like, he could do it. And he built rifles. So he built, we've got 2 of them actually. My wife's hunting rifle and mine are both like late 50s model Mausers that he rebuilt, rechambered, rebarreled, put stocks in. Like, they're, beautiful guns. Mine is, it's a family heirloom. Like, no one outside of this family will ever have that gun. It's got elephant tusk inlaid in the stock. Like, this thing is
wow,
art project.
That's awesome.
And was lucky enough to get that gun from him when he passed away.
That's super cool. Yeah, the only hunting heirloom I have, which is something I found out late,
if you can see over my shoulder here, the listeners can't, but there's a picture there of my great uncle Bunky. That wasn't his name. His name was Mike. I'm actually partially named after him, but Bunky was because he was a bunkmate with my dad when my dad was a child. But it's a picture of him with the mule deer, and he's wearing his overalls and his flannel shirt, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he's got his Colorado mule deer from probably 1920. So I do come from hunters somewhere if you go far enough back. But that's the only heirloom I have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So how that 270 kind of parlays into this mule deer story is, I married my wife, had this gun. I'd kind of hunted a little bit here and there, but shot a pig with it, shot a deer, but nothing serious. And when we get married, my brother-in-law, who we'll talk about him a little bit later, but he is, hardcore hunter, but he was also really into long range shooting, and he had just kind of started getting into that. He's a gunsmith. This dude's a wizard when it comes to tinkering on guns and bows. Like he's got lathes, mills, all the machining tools you could ever need. He could build you a gun from basically raw materials inside of his shop.
Wow.
So,
it's a good person to know.
Yeah, he says, hey, we're going to take your 270 and we're going to not trick it out, but we're going to make this thing actually shoot. And so this is kind of what starts the saga of my Western hunting lifestyle, and kind of in my more adult life. And so we start tinkering with this 270 and do a little work to it, start shooting long range. And now every time we're there, he's like, hey, you need to go elk hunting with us. You need to put in for this tag. You need to get a bow and start doing this. And it's like this kind of drip campaign that he's doing of like, you need to, you need to come hunt with us.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, man, I got a ranch in Texas I can go shoot whitetails on, off a feeder. Like, it's awesome. You get to drink beer at hunting camp. It's just, it's not what he's talking about. He's talking about backpacking into these deep, nasty canyons, chasing elk. And I'm like, this sounds horrible. I just want to hang out and shoot my whitetails. And so he slowly kind of whittles me down. And so 2 years before the mule deer story, the final story, he talks me into going over the counter elk hunting in Colorado. I bought a bow. I'm working on my archery. I'm getting confident in that. And I'm like, all right, we're going to hunt elk in Colorado. So we drive into the unit. We probably park, I don't know, as far off the main highway as we can get up this nasty little logging road. And then we backpack in 7 miles from the truck into this basin. And this is the year that Colorado had that really early freak snowstorm. We kind of get stuck out in
this was what year is this? 2020?
The day before the snow comes in. It's been 2020. Yep.
I was out there for that snowstorm as well.
Yeah, we're at like 9,000 feet is where our backpack camp is. It starts snowing a little bit the first night we're out there. There's a burn ban in effect, and him and I are like looking back and forth like, we really need to start a fire because it's really cold up here. We have our September gear. Like, nobody has heavy, we've got enough jackets to kind of stay warm, but like, we're not ready to be in the snow by any stretch of the imagination.
I can't even imagine being 7 miles back, man. When that hit us, we were by our trucks. We drove the roads, just seeing collapsed tent after collapsed tent. It was a brutal snowstorm.
It was crazy. So the next, it snows a little bit. The next morning, we're like, hey, we got to get out of here. So we put packs on, hike back up the mountain, back to the truck camp where we've got tents, sleep in tents that night. And yeah, same thing. Tents caved in on us. There's like 2 or 2.5 feet of snow up on top of that ridge. And it's like halfway through my hunt. And we're like, what should we do? And I joke and say that hunt was, Dumb and Dumber. So he was dumb because he had an inReach that had weather capabilities and didn't ever think to look at, like, is there snow coming? Like, what's going on? So almost got us stuck out in that bad snowstorm. But I'm dumber. So we hiked back into the basin where we were at. We'd spotted elk. We'd had one kind of bugling at us. And at this point in the hunt, I'm like so frustrated. We're not getting into them. This huge country, even if you see one, it might take you all day to walk to where he is and no telling where he's actually at. And so I tell Colt, my brother-in-law, I say, I don't care what we got to do. We're killing an elk today. Even if we got to foot track one across this mountain, because there's fresh snow, we can find tracks. Yep. And he asked me 2 or 3 times, are you sure that you want to do that? And I was like, yes, I've had it. Like, if I got to tie an elk up to a tree and beat him to death with a trekking pole, like, we're killing one today. I'm over this. I'm mad at him.
Yeah.
So in the next 2 days that followed, we hiked 33 miles, full backpacking kit on, up and down these drainages. We would hike so far that we would go at the top of the mountain we were at all the way to the bottom to the highway. We'd have my brother-in-law's dad was with us. we'd send him the other direction to go get the truck, drive down and get us so we could drive back up and make a different loop the next day. Needless to say, we did never get an elk killed. They completely went silent after that. So we got sort of close the last day. But yeah, it was one of the most brutal things I've ever done physically.
It was a tough day.
Yeah, it was rough. That was a rough hunt. But that kind of got the bug of the Western hunt. I was like, all right, I can see why you like doing this. We did kill a grouse, so we didn't get completely skunked. And glad we killed that grouse.
That's the most expensive chicken dinner you've ever had, right?
Oh my gosh. And I hate to say it, but it tasted awful because we didn't have any salt or oil or anything in the, back with us in our backpack and stuff. We just had freeze dried and dehydrated food. And we were running a little low on that. So that grouse was welcome, but I can't say that it was tasty. It kind of tasted like sucking on a pine cone, but whatever. It was part of the adventure. And like I said, that kind of started off the want to go Western hunting. So the next year, it's time to put in for tags. They live close to Albuquerque, and generally as a hunter, I would never tell unit numbers, but I'm going to on this hunt because this is almost an impossible tag to draw. So we put in for Unit 8 mule deer. We found out this year when the proclamations came out, there were 2 out-of-state tags that got issued for that entire unit, and I got one of them.
Oh, so, wow. Talk about Unit 8 in Colorado or
Unit 8
in Mexico?
Yeah,
okay,
so that whole side of the family is from Albuquerque. We put in for Unit
What were they
8.
doing hunting in Colorado the year before?
Man, so my brother-in-law is kind of like a have bow will travel.
Okay.
It was like we all put in for stuff in New Mexico. Nobody drew any tags. We're like, well, we still want to go chase elk. Let's figure out where else to go. And so I'm the one that they talked into buying this over-the-counter tag in New Mexico so we could go on an adventure. Because we kind of, as the group of us, and there's a few of us, we're going somewhere in September to chase elk. We'll figure out the way that someone has a tag so that we can all tag along and be in the elk woods in September. So,
yeah.
So anyways, he tells me, he's like, hey, put in for this hunt. The percentage draw odds are like 0.06% or something like that for an out of state. Everybody's like, just put in for it as your first choice. Whatever. Nothing's going to, you're probably not going to draw it, but who cares? You got a chance. So I pluck this tag and I'm like, oh man, like this is a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity.
Yeah.
I had been up there with my brother-in-law 2 years before this. He drew the tag as a resident, so a little better chance to draw it. Had scouted it, had found some big deer. This is just a widely known unit of having big deer. It's also cool. It's wilderness only, so it's all bow hunting, no vehicle traffic. You can't ride a bike in there. Like it is foot traffic only, archery only.
That's awesome.
True wilderness stuff. So that hunt starts, the year I had it, it started on New Year's Day, was opening day. It went through the 15th of January, which worked out perfect because we usually do Christmas in Albuquerque. We take off down there, the week of Christmas, and I'm like, I've got a week to scout before this deal starts. This will be great. And from what I know of this unit, there should be deer everywhere that I go. I should find deer. As you may know, that's not how that happened. So I scouted for 5 days, hard scouting. I was out, basically sun up to sundown every day for 5 days in the wilderness looking for deer. And I was not finding deer at all. It went to all the spots that, I knew quite a few people that had that tag. My brother-in-law had that tag. We have tons of Onyx waypoints marked of like, hey, we've been here, we've glassed deer. Like I'm going to all of them. Can't find deer. They're just not where we're looking. So the last 2 days before the hunt start, I go to this area and I'm thinking, I got to get further in. I kept thinking like, I'm just not far enough in. I got to get further in. I hike way back in here, still no deer. And as I'm coming out, I kind of get frustrated at this point on this day. And there was something else going on. I had to come back into town for the afternoon. I was like, well, I'm going to turn around and come back out and just see, I'm going to take this trail out and just kind of glass my way along and see if I can find anything. And so the way that this particular country runs, it's kind of looks like 2 steps. Like if you're looking at steps from a profile angle. So there's a ridge that I'm walking along. There's a bowl and kind of a high basin. And then that would be to my north, I believe. Then directly south, there's a great big bowl down on the bottom where like the main trail is at. And you can glass from this vantage point I'm at, you can glass a long ways in both directions. So there's kind of two bowls you can glass from the same spot. And I'm like, if nothing else, it's a really good vantage point to glass from. We can see a lot of country from here. It's half a mile into the wilderness. You can see a long ways, so I'll mark this spot down. As I'm sitting there, this is, again, 2 days before the hunt starts, I see the biggest 3-point I've ever seen in my life. This deer is, I'm not a guy that usually gets super caught up in inches, but this is probably a 160-inch 3x3 mule deer. Humongous.
Wow.
Looks like he's got baseball bats for tines. I mean, mass. I'm also not a guy that names deer, but this one got a name. His third on his right side had a big hook across the top. So I called him Skyhook. A huge, tall and this big hooked antler. And I'm like, man, that's a nice deer. Like, I'm going to put some time in on him. So I put him to bed that day. My brother-in-law comes with me the day before the hunt. We glass another little section, spot some more deer. And I said, hey, he was sick. He'd actually had COVID right before this. He's kind of getting over it. He's like, I'm going to kick out of here at like 2 so I can go home and sleep for opening day. And I'm like, sounds good. I'm going to go back up and glass this basin again and see if I can find this Skyhook deer. Sure enough, find him. He's 100 yards from where I'd seen him yesterday. I put him to bed a second day. So I know I have like 6 hours invested behind glass on this deer. And I'm like, he is going to be right here opening morning. No one has messed with him. We're going to walk right up here opening morning. I'm going to sit on top of this hill. We're going to look in this basin. I'm going to find him, and we're going to shoot him, and we're going to be done with this hunt in 2 hours, right? And the other part of this is, in my 5 days of scouting, I have seen 0 people that look like they're scouting for deer. This area has got tons of foot traffic, lots of hikers and walkers and people walking their dogs, and there's people everywhere, but like no one that I pass is like, oh, that guy might be scouting for this deer hunt. And I'm like, this is perfect. I'm going to have this deer.
Do you know how many resident tags there are? I know there were 2 out of state.
I think there's like 60 potentially.
Okay.
It's a pretty good size unit, and I think it's less than 100 total tags. So
got it.
And then it's a decent size unit. It's a pretty big mountain, so it's like very well could be that I am the only person glassing this
for sure
particular basin, because everybody else has their own spots in different different places. So opening morning comes. Remember, it's January 1st. We hike up to the top of the trailhead. As soon as we get to the parking lot, there's 2 guys in a pickup, and they tear off out of there. Like, generally, kind of trailhead etiquette that I've seen is like, if we were there at the same time, we're going to talk like, hey, where are you guys going? Where are we going? Let's go opposite directions so we're not on top of each other. But these guys get out of their truck. I don't know if they didn't see us, whatever. And they boogie. They take off up the trail. I don't know where they go. We're still getting our stuff put together, but we're going to go up to the Glassing Knob. We get up to the top of the Glassing Knob. A little snow flurry rolls in. It gets foggy. We can't see. One other thing that's kind of
glassing, right?
Yeah, we can't see anything. One other thing that's important to know in this area is that the wilderness is bordered a lot by city ground. You can't hunt the city. You can only hunt the wilderness. So where I'm sitting, there's a fence line probably 400 yards to my right, which is the boundary of the city and the wilderness you can hunt. And these deer you can see the trail. You can see where these deer have been crossing underneath this fence. So we're sitting over there. It finally breaks. I glass down. I find the group of deer. Skyhook is in the group. There's a bunch of does, a couple other decent bucks in there. And I'm like, awesome, I got them found. They're coming they're coming right up here to bed, just like they have for the last 3 days. And all of a sudden, they kind of get a little weird acting. They kind of just get fidgety, and they all do cross a fence. I'm like, that's odd. There must be somebody on a trail down there walking their dog or something that boogered them. And no more than I say that I see a guy's head pop up in the draw.
Oh no!
Got camo on, has a bow. From where I'm sitting, he's completely upwind of these deer. So he's on the complete wrong side of these deer. And they had, from what we can tell, they pushed those deer. So they found them too on the city ground. They pushed them underneath the fence onto the wilderness. This guy crawls up the other side of the drainage or the basin from me, knocks an arrow, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this can't be happening right now. Like, this is the only good buck I've seen the whole time we've been here. What's going on? He shoots and he misses him, and this deer start running at us. And I'm like, well, I probably better knock an arrow and get down there. And this deer might just run by me. He misses the deer, knocks another arrow. We're watching this whole thing through glass. Shoots the deer.
How far do you think it is that you're actually viewing all this happen?
Oh man, I'm 500 yards from this guy. Like,
okay,
I'm close enough I can see like what kind of camo pattern he's got on. Like, this is yeah, we're in close. He doesn't know we're there. We're kind of hidden up in a little rock perch, but so I watch him shoot this deer. I watch him kill my deer, but I watch him kill this deer I've been sitting on for 2 days.
Oh
And this whole
no!
thing,
So he hit it with a second arrow.
yeah, hit him with a second arrow. It did look like from where we were at, didn't make a great shot, but deer only runs 100 yards, beds down, and the guy was smart. Like kudos to him and his hunting buddy. They backed out and let that deer die. If they'd have tried to push him, where that deer was headed was nasty, nasty stuff, and they may have had some trouble getting him found. So, yeah, kudos to them. They got a great deer killed. We actually talked to a guy later at the trailhead that had pictures of that deer that he had scouted. He's like, yeah, I knew that deer. I know the guys that killed him. And I was like, well, if you see him, like, give him a hard time and tell him they shot my deer. So we're still up on the Glassed Knob, and we're like, well, I guess we're already here. We've seen deer on this other side. Let's just turn around, basically. Let's just turn around and see what we can see. Glass off the other side, and we see this big, wide frame. That's all I can see from this deer, but just tall and wide. I'm like, that's also a very, very nice deer. We should see what happens with him. Put him to bed, and let's see if we can stalk him. It's only 8 o'clock in the morning at this point, or 9. It's still early in the day. We got plenty of time left, and it's also only opening day, so we got 2 weeks left on it. Put this deer to bed, kind of find the little crevice that he's crawled into, bomb down the hill, go up the other side and get around him, try to get the wind right. We get above him. This buck has got probably 20 does with him. So one of the criteria I told my brother-in-law was like, I don't care how big this deer is, but I want to shoot a mature, like definitely, the bull of the woods, like one of those kind of bucks. I don't care if he's a giant forky, but like I want to shoot a big mature buck. This is a, hard tag to get. I'm not going to waste it on a forked horn kind of a situation. And so this deer's got all these does, and I'm like, man, this is a nice deer. Let's figure out a way to stalk in on him. Throughout this day, we keep having these little snow flurries that are blowing in and out. It's starting to get cold. We put this deer to bed. I start stalking in on him. I get busted by a doe at like 8 yards that I didn't know was there. I picked the spot. I've got the wind right. I'm like, if I can get to that tree, this buck should be about 40 yards away. If I can get to that tree and not make any noise, he'll be 40 yards away, and I can just wait till he stands up, and I'll have an easy shot. We thought we had found all the does around him, and we just, there were just more of them in there than we thought. So I get busted by this doe. She kind of gets up and doesn't really run off. These deer aren't like super pressured. Then there's people all around them all the time, so they don't just take off out of the country like some mule deer will. But she definitely gets up, and the whole group kind of gets up and starts milling around. So I stop where I'm at. I've got an okay shooting lane. Sure enough, the buck walks out, pull my rangefinder out. He's 53 yards. I'm 100% happy with 53-yard shot. Not a big deal. Like I have a range at my house. I shoot out to 120 every day. The wind's not blowing too hard to do it. So 53 yards is in the wheelhouse. Dial it, hook my release on it. As I'm doing it, that buck sees me, and he walks about 10 or 15, steps up the side of this hill. And it's just far enough where I'm like, I should probably range him again because I'm running a slider at this point. I need to dial this. I can't. He's probably far enough away. I can't Kentucky windage this and guess, or I'm going to miss it. Pull the rangefinder out. Ranger, I can't get him. All I'm getting is now snowing hard enough. All I can get is snow. I keep getting like 3 yards, 8 yards, 4 yards. And I'm just like, what in the heck is going on?
I've had that at the range before. Yeah, that's frustrating. And I can't imagine with an animal in front of you.
Yes. And it seems like I'm sitting here trying to range this buck for 5 minutes and I can't get a range. And finally he never really boogers bad, but he finally was like, whatever, kid, jigs up, walks up over the hill, leaves his does, and he's gone. And I'm like, gosh dang it. We were close. Like hindsight's 2020. Like I should have just guessed the yardage. I should have just dialed 60 and, whatever. And I'm frustrated. At this point, the day's kind of shot. We spent most of the rest of that day on that buck. We tried to stalk in on a smaller buck. It just kind of had one of those days, it wasn't going to happen that day. Leave and come back the next morning, and it had gotten cold. Like it's 5 degrees. The next day we got to hunt, and it is freezing. The trail we're walking in on, basically all of the bottom of this basin is just sand and gravel. So it sounds like you're walking on tortilla chips. Like it's so loud. It doesn't matter how quiet you try to walk. Everything is just loud. We're walking and we're going to go back up to that same Glassed Knob and kind of just rinse and repeat from the day before. As we're walking in, we spot this buck in the bottom. 200 yards away from us, feeding, got his does with him. He's basically a ridge over where he'd walked over the night before. He's right there. And so we're like, well, let's go get him. I take off after him, try to stalk him. It's so loud. It's just not happening. I can't get within 60 yards of him. if I,
Yeah.
belly crawled. Meanwhile, my brother-in-law and his dad had gone. They'd already said, "Hey, we're just going to go up the ridge and spot for you. Basically, you just take it easy and see if you can slip in on this deer." I kind of booger him a little bit, and I'm like, "Yeah, whatever. I'm going to go back up with them." So I back out, head up the trail towards where they're at. My brother-in-law is running down the trail, and he meets me about halfway, and he's like, "Hey, you can go kill that deer right now." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I just kind of boogered him." He's like, "No, that deer's in a spot. You can go shoot him right now. There's if you imagine a big bull on the right side of it, there's kind of there's like two little embankments and a ditch in between them." And he said that deer is feeding on the top of the furthest embankment from us. You can walk right down the trail, just 15 yards off the trail. You can get behind the second embankment. You can walk up. We'll tell you the rock to go up. You can go right up that route. You'll be 40 yards from him, and he's never going to know you're there because you're going to come from completely out of sight. Wind's perfect. You got him. Like, this is game over. I'm like, sweet. So I take off back down the hill, get to the little embankment, start sneaking my way up here, and I've got it like I'm going to go to this rock behind this bush. He's never going to know I'm there. I got all the time in the world if I can get there and not blow these deer out. I'm just going to sit there, and we're going to let him walk out. He's going to either walk down the lane to my left, and he's going to be 20 yards, or he's going to walk down the lane to my right, and he's going to be 50 yards. Game, set, match. Like, we got it done. As I'm sneaking up to the top of that ridge, I get busted by two more does. This time at like 8. Like, I almost kicked one of them.
Yeah.
And these two does blow out, and I'm like, gosh dang it. Like, again, like we glass, same thing. Like we've glassed this over trying to find deer to make sure this doesn't happen. And, I about step on one. So I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm going to push my way up to the spot and just see, maybe he's far enough away from these does that he's not going to freak out. Get up to my spot, my little ambush spot. I start ranging some different stuff, as you're supposed to do. I range across to the other berm, and it's about 70 yards on that angle. Start ranging some different spots, and I'm looking around and I don't see any deer. And I know there's 20 head of deer in with this herd. And I'm not seeing any of them other than those two that I boogered out. And I'm like, I don't want to peek around my little bush and my rock far enough to look, because if I do, I'm going to be sticking out like a sore thumb. My head's just going to pop around, and I'm going to kind of be skylined. And I'm like, this isn't good. I'm not going to risk it. So I start texting my brother-in-law, and I'm like, hey, because he's way up high. He's 500 feet higher than I am. He can see this whole thing. And I'm like, where is this deer? Like, is he still here? Did I blow him out? What's the deal? And he texts me back. He says, he is 40 yards away from you. Step around to the right and shoot him. And it's kind of like he sends me like multiple, like, shoot him kind of text. I'm like, all right, cool. So he's right there. Okay. So I peek around. I pull my rangefinder out, go to zap him. Nothing. Try it again. Nothing. Remember, it's like 5 degrees. So I'm like, my battery, like my rangefinder is frozen. Yeah. So I sneak back around behind the rock, pull the battery out of my rangefinder, try to warm it up, put it back together, stick my head back around the corner, go to range him. Nothing. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. And then meanwhile, my phone keeps buzzing because my brother-in-law is texting me like he's watching all this. Like, what are you doing? And he's like, what is your deal? And so I'm like, finally, he's like, he's got to be like 40 yards. Like, just step around there and shoot him. Okay. Well, I know he's not 40 because I know that bank that he's on was 68 from that spot on the, basically on a 90 degree from it was 68 yards. So it's got to be like 70-ish.
Yeah.
And this is the mistake I make in the hunt. It turns out okay, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to range him for 71 yards. The way he's standing, there's a big rock behind him and a big rock basically right at the bottom of his belly. So I'm going to aim 71 yards. He's quartering away. I'm going to hold it a little bit higher on his back and a little bit back, as where you would for a quartering away shot. If I'm off by 4 yards in my range, I'm going to miss this deer completely. I'm not going to hit him at all. And if I'm right, I got plenty of room to sneak it in there, and we'll see what happens. So I draw back. It does need to be said, I was shooting Rage Tripans, so there's a lot of debate in the Western hunting community about mechanicals versus fixed blades, and I'll just say this: that broadhead saved my butt. So I send this arrow to him, and it looks to me like from where I'm at, it looks like I miss him low. Like it looks like it just goes right behind his flank and just underneath his belly. Yeah. I don't know. I think I missed him. And he takes 2 steps and he's over the side of the berm and I can't see him anymore. And so I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, I call my brother-in-law and I'm like, you saw it. What happened? Did it hit him or what's going on? He's like, oh yeah, you hit him. And I'm like, well, I hit him good. He's like, not really, but he's going to die. I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And he's like, when that deer took off over the top of that burn we were watching him, he said all of his guts were just hanging out. And I'm like,
Oh, geez.
what? And so I'm like, oh, okay, that's not where I was, that doesn't sound good, but whatever. He's like, no, he's going to die. We watched him bed down. He says, you come back up to the hill. We're just going to give him plenty of time. We don't want to get in there and bump him. If we bump him, we may never find him. I'm like, all right, cool. So I take back off up the hill. We're sitting up there glassing, and they're like, he laid down right here at this spot. We could see horns, and now we can't see him. But they're like, we know he didn't leave because we have been watching this spot. No one has not had glass on this area since you shot and came back up here. So he's in there somewhere. We just don't know where. And, for folks that have been up there that go around there, the brush there is just tall enough, like a deer could kind of crawl their way around and you may not see them. But for the most part, if they're like standing up and running, you can see them, with your naked eye. So up at the top of the hill, they're like, hey, we're going to give this deer a couple hours. It's 6 degrees outside, so we're not worried about the meat going bad. You just hang out and we'll see if he gets up. There's a trail that runs right in front of where this buck's at, 15 yards from where they think he's laying down dead. People walk on this trail all the time, walking dogs. We'd had a couple dogs chase some deer away that we were looking at when we were scouting. And so I asked my brother, and I'm like, so what happens if a guy walks his pit bull down this trail and right in front of my buck and he doesn't get up? Like, should we go down there? And I mean, no more do the words come out of my mouth than a guy with a pit bull takes a left right up the trail in front of where this buck is at, and nothing happens. Deer doesn't move, and we're like, I guess he's dead, right? That's
Yeah.
He didn't get up. We should go down there and look. And so get down there. I never did range how far that buck was, but my best guess is that he was probably closer to like 75 or 80.
Gotcha.
I should have ranged that spot, later with my brother-in-law's rangefinder. Never did. Find the arrow, start following, and this is the most gnarly blood trail I've ever seen because it's not blood. It's actually like pieces of deer hanging in the sagebrush where he's tearing his stuff out.
Yeah.
Get over there, and like I said, that rage saved my bacon. It hit him a little further back than I meant, so I kind of hit him in the flank versus last rib. But it had literally cut just like you were gonna field dress him. It cut his whole belly to his sternum open, and everything was laid out. So yeah, if I know there's people that knock shooting the mechanicals, but that thing absolutely saved my bacon. By far and away the biggest deer I've ever killed. I don't know what he wound up scoring, but hope to have him back from the taxidermist here shortly. But yeah, it was an awesome hunt, and to get to watch, get to watch a deer get killed, have an encounter with this buck 2 days in a row, both times got in bow range of him, and then to get the deal done. Yeah, it was awesome. That pack out, I took as much deer, my brother-in-law and his dad were there, and they were trying to divvy packs up, and I'm like, whatever, just put more in my pack. I don't care. This pack can weigh 200 pounds. Like, I'm stoked to walk this deer out. We're like a mile from the truck, so it's not like we got a long ways to go.
Just fired up.
Yeah, I was pretty pumped. So I mentioned earlier, we get to the trailhead and we meet a guy. I've got my deer in my pack. This guy comes in, he's like, hey, that's a nice deer. He guides, I guess, a little bit up there, had some friends with that tag. And he shows me a picture of, they killed like a 180-inch deer during a youth hunt up there. My deer, the skyhook deer, and a double drop tine buck in a bachelor group together. So like all the biggest deer in the area. He's like, yeah, these deer are all hanging out together. Oh, here's the one you killed. Here's the one that guy killed. Here's the one this kid killed. The double drop tine buck has broke both of his drop tines off, so he's not very impressive anymore, but he's in that drainage. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, we should have called this guy.
Stuff.
But it was awesome. Coolest hunting experience I've ever had. And that buck was old. We haven't got an age on him. I'd say somewhere between like 7 and 10, just an old warrior, big Roman nose. Like, he was an awesome deer.
That's awesome, man. I got to ask, and not that any type of hunting is better than the other, but are you sold on Western hunting yet? I know you were like, I like my blinds, I like my beer at camp. Where does your preference lie now?
It's still 50-50, only because deer season in Texas is so long. I'm like, yeah, we're going to do Western hunts, and then I'm going to spend a month in the blind shooting cold deer and, pigs or whatever else shows up. So they're both awesome. I don't have any.
Yes, good.
I still can't
good
say
answer.
we'll have this conversation again if I get an elk killed this year, and then it'll probably be like, no, it's elk hunting when they're screaming in your face. It's the greatest thing ever. But anytime you can get that close. So I'll say maybe this is a non-answer to your question. Bow hunting over rifle hunting any day of the week. Anytime you're that close to animals, is awesome. You know, I was a terrible bow hunter for a while. I mean, you'd think like, hey, you got 20-yard shots at whitetails out of a blind. I missed the first 6 deer I shot at 20 yards, right? Talk about make you want to pull your hair out. But a little bit of it was like I got so freaked out. I'd never heard a deer eat, which sounds crazy, but like they're that close, you can hear them chew in them situations. And it kind of got me a little rattled, a little buck fever. And I'm glad I got over it. But bow hunting for sure.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
No, I've done both, and I've killed big game with rifles, but I have not killed any big game with my bow yet. So far, just turkeys. But I can feel it. I've gotten close. I've blown some opportunities, and it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's if you ever get the chance to make it to Texas, I will say that's some of the best practice you can get for that moment is in those ground blind settings. It's a great opportunity to learn how much noise you can and can't get away with. And I'll tell you that like whitetail deer down there are way more, skittish really, I think, than any Western stuff I've ever been around.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good opportunity to get reps in that red zone, work on your shot process when there's a chance to actually kill something. And gotta love deer meat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the year that I'm going to put down something big with my bow. Cause I have, let's see, I'm going to get an antelope tag, bear tag. I've got my muley tag. I've got an elk tag. I'm going to Texas to hunt whitetail, and I've been invited on an aoudad hunt in Texas as well. So I've got a fair amount of reps, and hopefully I'm not so terrible that I miss all of these things. But ask me next year how I did, and I bet I got a couple down.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, I will say on the Texas whitetail, they talk about string ducking. They mean it. That was the reason it took me 6 arrows to finally get one killed. The guy I was hunting with finally was like, "Are you holding like on them?" And I'm like, well, "Yeah." I mean, he's like, "No, like hold it under them. Put your pin like right at the bottom of their belly, or that belly line." And he's like,
"Yeah,
you'll get them killed." I was like, "What? That seems crazy." And sure enough, the first one I did, that 12 ringer, right where you want to, because they duck so bad. So just take that into consideration. They will absolutely duck your string. I don't care how fast your bow's going; they're faster.
Yeah, no, my bow's made for elk, so it's not insanely fast, but it's got a heavy arrow. So
yeah,
that's good. That's good information. I'm probably going to need that. I'll probably, hopefully, I remember that if I go full draw on a whitetail this year.
Yeah, awesome,
cool, Phil. Well, this is fun. You got any other stories you want to share with us, or was that the chronological order of your Western hunting there? That was pretty good.
Yeah, that's the chronological. I'll give you one more. One of the other podcasts, your guys was talking about a pig. This is kind of a funny pig story.
All right.
Hunting out of a stand in West Texas on a river bottom, super pretty, gorgeous country. One of my favorite places I've ever hunted before. Deer hunting, and I had 2 days to hunt. Basically, had a weekend to hunt, so I was going to sit all day, both days in this stand, and had packed lunch with me. It was straight up noon. I got my sandwich out, getting ready to eat lunch, and there's some tall grass that kind of surrounds that set where I'm at, and this grass starts moving, which if a deer's walking through it, you can see the deer, and I'm like, well, that's kind of odd. The wind's not blowing, and pretty soon this big herd of probably 15 or 20 hogs comes running out. Middle of the day, there's no feeder going off, like they just blow into this set where this feeder's at. So start tearing it up, rooting up the corn, and there's one big sow in this group, and I'm like, I'm gonna shoot this big sow. I've got that 270 with me, shooting 180 grain soft points. These are big bullets. I'm 100 yards away, so this should not. I'm plenty of gun here, right?
Yeah.
Shoot this pig. I shoot her right behind the ear. So I'm like, I'm a head shooter because why not? It's a pig. I don't care. There's too many of them in Texas. We need to shoot more of them. Shoot this hog in the head, and obviously it drops her like a bag of hammers. I mean, she just hits the ground. I'm like, cool. I'm gonna go get my pig. Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to eat another bite of my sandwich and jump out of this blind, and I'm going to go get her. And about the time I pick my sandwich back up, I look out there. All the other pigs have run off. And this pig I just shot in the head stands up and starts walking out from underneath this feeder.
No.
I'm like, no freaking way. Like I know I didn't miss her because it KO'd her. Like it smashed her. I was like, there's no way this is actually happening. And so I think I gave her two more, and finally, like for sure, had her killed. And it was a little unnerving walking up to this big old hog. And then the guy whose lease I was hunting on, I called him and told him about it. And he said, "Well, did we weren't going to eat them. That the hogs down there are nasty and they kind of look mangy almost, and they're just I don't know. I probably should eat them, but I don't." He's like,
Yeah.
"Well, did you shoot her somewhere she'd run off and not be underneath your feeder?" And I said, "No, because I'm not that smart. I shot her and she's dead right under the feeder. So now I got to go drag this 200-pound sow off of my deer feeder, clean it back up, and take her away." So this was like Saturday evening. I dropped that carcass off in a spot I could see by the road. And to tell you the kind of hog problem they've got up there, that pig was gone. I mean, you could see where a couple bones were.
Yeah.
That pig was gone. I actually had a deer that the next day I shot a deer that ran across a river. I lost blood. I said, "Hey, I'll come back the next day and find her." And we found the deer, and there was no deer left. I found a head and about 6 vertebrae, and that was it.
Yeah, man. I've shot a deer in South Texas as well, and we cleaned it up, got everything out of there. I was back there a week later, nothing left but the hide.
Yeah, it was crazy. The deer that we lost, it looked like that deer had been there and it was a deer that it wasn't like, oh, maybe we found a deadhead. Like this deer had about a 11-inch long brow tine and then no points on one side. So it was like a very noticeable, like I know that's the deer.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was gone. There was nothing left of this deer.
Wow.
It was crazy how fast they ate those hogs. My wife was like, you never get to come here and hunt again on your own. What if you fell down and broke your leg? The pigs would eat you in 10 minutes. You're not wrong.
Yeah, I think I read a story about like an old lady. She was like the caretaker for an older lady, and she fell down going to her car and was eaten by pigs in Texas. So
Yeah,
it's not out of the realms of possibility, right?
no, it for sure can happen.
Yeah. Oh, that's crazy, man. Hogs are crazy. I don't know if I've told this story already on the podcast or not, but I went South Texas. Technically, it's public land, but we were in a riverbed. We're hunting, and I'm taking a buddy who just was a guy that I met on Facebook. Was like, "Hey, I'm in New Braunfels. I've never hunted. Anyone want to take me?" And I was like, "I'll take you. I don't know anything, but I'm happy to go with you." And so I taught him what I knew, and we hunted all day. Nothing happened. We're walking back to the car, and we come across like 15 hogs just in the middle of this riverbed. And he's like, "What do I do?" And I'm like, "Well, point your gun at one of them and shoot."
Start shooting.
I'm like, "This is all yours, buddy." I'm like, just do it. And so he pulls and we're shotguns with double out buckshot.
Oh yeah.
So he pulls his shotgun up and picks the biggest one and whack, boom, just nails it. Now, all of a sudden we got 15 hogs sprinting around us. And the one that got hit decides it's charging. So it comes straight at him, and he unloads every round of his shotgun into that pig, and it drops 2 feet in front of him. And I'm maybe 4 feet behind, but I'm like, "Oh, I should have my gun up," because it got hairy. Those hogs are nasty little critters. We did not eat any of the meat on that hog because
there wasn't much left.
Yeah, 3 rounds of double out buck. I mean, it was just momentum that kept that pig going forward by the end of it. But yeah, Texas has a big problem.
Yeah, they're scary. A buddy of mine, we were hunting in Claude, actually on the Paladuro Canyon. So that country's wild if people haven't been there. It's so flat that when you're standing on one side of the canyon, if you're far enough away from it, you can just see across to the other side. So you don't know that the canyon's there.
Absolutely.
When I first moved to there, they were going to college. People were like, "Yeah, there's this big canyon," and I was like, "You guys are lying." Like, no, there's not. I can't see nothing. It. And sure enough, you drive up to the edge of it, and all of a sudden, there's this big canyon. Yep. And so we were hunting some pigs on on the ranch that his family managed, and kind of the deal there was you would bait them up on top of the flat, and then in the middle of the night we drive out there and spotlight them in the pickup. And this is again like hunter safety, maybe not the greatest thing to do, but 2 guys are hanging out the window of this truck with ARs, and somebody else is in the back spotlighting hogs, and we're trying to shoot as many of them as we can shoot. And so we get one killed early in the morning, or get one hit early in the morning. We start tracking it, and he's like, "Dude, whatever, just leave this pig. We don't care. Like, we can go kill more." But the deer hunter in me at this point, it's my first hog experience, is like, "No, we got to go find this pig. Like, I got to make sure I killed this thing that I'm pretty sure I hit." And so we take off traipsing after this hog, and we get into this down into the bottom of the canyon. As we're trailing this pig, the walls of the canyon just start getting narrower and narrower and narrower. we're kind of following a little creek bed, and eventually it gets narrow enough to where like me standing up, I'm not a small guy, but I'm like touching the walls with my shoulders on both sides. And then as I can see ahead of us, it kind of opens back up into a little creek bottom, and we're like a bunch of brush. We're like, this hog is in there, and I just about get stepped into that creek bottom, and I start hearing this pig rustling around, or what I think is this pig. I don't know. It sounded like a bear was tearing this mesquite tree down, and I'm like, we shouldn't be down here. I don't have near enough gun for this. I've got a 223. Like, nope, this is not my deal. And my buddy's behind me, and he's laughing at me. He's like, I told you not to go down here. Like, we should have just left this pig and, went on about our business. Yeah. So we turned around and hightailed it out of there. I was pretty sure that hog was chasing us the whole way, and that was kind of my first pig experience. Everybody told me like how, mean and aggressive they were. And I got close enough to get freaked out, and I was like, never mind. No more.
Yeah. It only takes that one time. That's awesome. I will say that I went on another hog hunt another time. I actually didn't put any down, but as a group, we put down like 15, 20 hogs. And we prepped as many as we could, took as much meat home as we could. I ended up getting like 3 pigs worth of meat and took it to a real high quality butcher, and delicious, really good meat. I think I made most of it into breakfast sausage, some of it into more of just like a regular everyday sausage, but none of it cased, all of it just like ground meat.
Yep.
Amazing. I wish I still had some, so I need to get back to Texas and shoot a couple more.
Yeah, shoot all of them. If you have enough ammo, just keep shooting.
Yeah, awesome, Phil. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. Why don't you go ahead and tell the people where they can find you, your Instagram or whatever? Maybe you'll get a couple followers. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. So the page that my brother-in-law and I, we kind of co-run together, it's called Stoutfitters Outdoors, and it's STOUT and then fitters.outdoors. Shoot us a message. Like I said, he is, a heck of a gunsmith, builds long-range rifles. He and I kind of quasi-guide in some different spots. I've guided some people in Texas, and so there's just a group of us that all like to hunt New Mexico a lot, hunt Colorado some, hunt Texas some. So yeah, anybody that needs anything in that realm, or has, big deal for him is if you got a gun that you need worked on, or you want to soup it up and be able to shoot a long, long ways, look us up. So we'll get you set up.
Perfect, Phil. Perfect. And I will put links to all that stuff in the show notes. So in case you didn't have a pen on you when he mentioned that stuff, you'll be able to just go look below and click on that. So I think that's it, man. I know you got a good elk tag this year. That's what you tell me. We won't go too into the details because I want to keep your secret spots secret. But hopefully we can have you back on next year and talk about the elk that you put down.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't know how secret of a spot it's going to be. It's the same thing as that mule deer tag. It was a 1 of 5. So I've got 1 of 2 and 1 of 5. So we're batting 1,000 right now in the tag drawing department.
Phil, you got to start playing the lottery.
I guess I don't want to use all my luck on silly stuff like money. I need to just keep getting good hunting tags.
Yeah, man. I that's funny. I put in for a bunch of tags this year, and even ones that like, the go hunts and the hunting fools. Looking at all the draw odds, I had 100% chance, and I didn't draw my tags this year. So, whatever you're drinking, man, give me some of it.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I'm dumbfounded that it's been back-to-back years of these kind of tags. So hopefully we can put this into good use and have a good story for next time.
Perfect, Phil. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, folks, that's it. Another story in the books. I want to thank Phil, 1, for reaching out and connecting with me, and then 2, for coming on and telling his great stories. I had a really great time connecting with him. I hope we can stay friends for a while. I know that he lives in an area that I visit often, and he's got some family up near me, so hopefully we get to hang out again soon, and he's got more great stories to tell me. So that being said, folks, take a page from the book of Phil. Reach out to us. Let us know if you have some amazing stories. If you have a friend, your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, whoever it might be, if they have great stories, convince them to reach out because we'd love to hear them, and our listeners would love to hear them. I think that the everyday hunter are the stories that we're getting the best feedback on. So again, thank you all very much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. Phil, thank you so much for coming on and telling your stories. Now, everybody, let's get out there and let's make some stories of our own.